On a crisp autumn evening, the city was alive with the buzz of hurried footsteps, distant honks, and the occasional chatter of late-night wanderers. The towering skyscrapers gleamed under the soft glow of the streetlights, casting long shadows on the pavement below. Among the crowd, a man dressed in an impeccably tailored suit moved with purpose. His name was Alexander Cole, a self-made millionaire, a man whose life revolved around numbers, investments, and the unrelenting pursuit of success. Tonight, however, something would break his routine. As he strolled past a quiet alley, a faint rustling caught his ear. He turned his head slightly, his gaze landing on a hunched figure near a weathered brick wall. A homeless man, bundled in layers of tattered fabric, sat with his back against the cold stone. Beside him, two dogs nestled close. One, a small golden retriever with large expressive eyes, and the other, a lean black and white stray with a thin frame. Alexander wasn't the kind to stop. He was always on a schedule, always looking ahead. But something about the golden retriever made him pause. The way it lifted its head, ears perking up, tail twitching hesitantly. It wasn't just recognition, it was longing. His heart stuttered. Could it be for a moment? Memories flooded back. Memories of a puppy with boundless energy, running across his childhood yard, jumping into his arms, licking his face with pure joy. It couldn't be. That dog was gone, lost years ago. But as he stepped closer, the golden retriever stood, hesitant at first, then let out a soft whimper. The sound sent a shiver down Alexander's spine. He knelt, heart pounding, as the dog took a step forward, then another, before launching itself into his arms. "Max?" he breathed, barely able to believe it. Tears burned at the corners of his eyes as the dog nuzzled into his chest, tail wagging wildly. It was impossible. It had been 7 years since Max had gone missing, vanished from his estate without a trace. He had searched for months, posted flyers, hired professionals, until he had no choice but to give up. And here he was. The homeless man, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. His voice was rough, tired. "You know him?" Alexander turned to him, his emotions still reeling. "This was my dog. I lost him years ago." The man nodded, exhaling a heavy sigh. "Found him a year back, wandering the streets. Thought he was just another stray." He patted the second dog gently. "They've been my only family since." Something in the man's voice struck Alexander. A quiet dignity, a weight of experiences untold. He wasn't just another face. In the crowd, another forgotten soul lost to the streets. Alexander glanced down at Max, who looked up at him with those same trusting eyes from years ago. Then he looked at the other dog, shivering against the man's side. He had been taken in, cared for, just like Max. Alexander made a decision right then. "You saved him," he said, meeting the man's eyes. "You saved both of them." The man shrugged. "They saved me too." A long silence stretched between them before Alexander extended a hand. "Come with me. Let's get all of you somewhere warm." The man hesitated. "I don't take charity." "This isn't charity," Alexander said firmly. "It's gratitude." The man looked down at the dogs. Max wagged his tail. The other dog nudged his leg. Slowly, he nodded. And so, in the midst of a city that rarely stopped to notice, something extraordinary happened. A millionaire and a man with nothing walked side by side, guided by the unspoken bond of loyalty, fate, and second chances. Alexander led the man and the two dogs toward his car, a sleek black sedan that seemed out of place in the worn-down alleyway. The homeless man hesitated at the sight of the luxury vehicle, shifting uncomfortably. Sensing his unease, Alexander offered a small smile. "You don't have to worry," he said. "This isn't a one-time gesture, it's a new beginning." The man looked at him skeptically but saw the sincerity in his eyes. With a deep breath, he nodded and climbed into the passenger seat, his dog settling between them. As the city lights flickered past the windows, Alexander finally asked the question that had been on his mind. "What's your name?" The man exhaled. "Ethan." "Ethan," Alexander repeated, committing it to memory. How long have you been out here? Ethan ran a hand through his unkempt hair. A few years. Lost my job, lost my home. When you hit rock bottom, it's hard to climb back up. Alexander nodded. He understood more than people realized. Once, his life had been unstable too. He had clawed his way to success, but he had never forgotten what it felt like to have nothing. As they pulled into the driveway of Alexander's estate, Ethan's eyes widened. The house was vast, with warm light spilling from its massive windows. He swallowed hard, gripping the door handle. I don't belong here. You do now, Alexander said. Come inside. Let's get you cleaned up and figure out a plan. Hesitantly, Ethan stepped out, the dogs trotting beside him. As they entered the grand foyer, a housekeeper gasped at the sight of Max. Oh my, is that Max? She exclaimed, dropping her duster. It is, Alexander confirmed, rubbing Max's head. He found his way back, and he brought company. Ethan looked down at his other dog, who stared up at him with loyal eyes. His name's Shadow, he murmured. Been with me since he was a pup. Then Shadow stays too, Alexander said without hesitation. That night, Ethan took a warm shower for the first time in years. Clean clothes, a real meal, and a safe place to sleep. It felt unreal. He lay in the plush bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all just a fleeting dream. But morning came, and the kindness remained. Over the next few weeks, Ethan slowly adjusted to his new reality. Alexander didn't just offer him a place to stay, he offered him a job, a fresh start. It wasn't pity, it was respect. I know how hard it is to rebuild, Alexander told him one evening over dinner. But I also know it's possible. You have the strength, Ethan. You just need a chance. Ethan's throat tightened. No one had believed in him for years. But maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. And so, with Max and Shadow always at their sides, two men, one who had lost everything and one who had found something more valuable than wealth, began an unlikely friendship that would change both their lives forever. Because sometimes, fate doesn't just take away. Sometimes it gives back in ways you never expected. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan found himself transforming in ways he never thought possible. The once broken man who had resigned himself to a life on the streets now stood with a renewed sense of purpose. Under Alexander's guidance, he not only regained his confidence, but also discovered a hidden talent for business strategy. One afternoon, as they sat in Alexander's expansive office overlooking the city, Ethan hesitated before speaking. I've been thinking. You've given me so much. I want to give something back. Alexander leaned forward, intrigued. What do you have in mind? Ethan exhaled, glancing down at Max and Shadow, who rested at their feet. A foundation to help the homeless, especially those with pets. I know firsthand how hard it is to find shelter when you refuse to abandon the only family you have left. A slow smile spread across Alexander's face. That's an incredible idea. We can make it happen. They wasted no time. With Alexander's financial backing and Ethan's deep understanding of the struggles faced by those on the streets, they launched the Golden Bond Foundation. It started as a small initiative, temporary housing, job assistance, and veterinary care for the homeless and their pets. But soon, word spread, and more people joined their cause. Ethan's story became an inspiration. News outlets covered his journey from destitution to empowerment, and donations poured in. He spoke at community events, sharing his experiences and encouraging others to believe in second chances. Despite the newfound success, Ethan remained humble. He still walked the streets where he once slept, talking to those who felt invisible, offering not just help, but genuine understanding. And always, Max and Shadow were by his side, symbols of the unbreakable bond that had changed his life. One evening, as Alexander and Ethan sat on the steps of the Foundation's newest shelter, watching the sunset, Alexander turned to his friend. I think you found your purpose. Ethan smiled, scratching Max behind the ears. Maybe, Or maybe I just found people who believed in me. Alexander nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. And so, two men from vastly different worlds, connected by fate and kindness, continued their journey, proving that no matter how lost someone may seem, a helping hand and an open heart can change everything. As the Golden Bond Foundation flourished, Ethan and Alexander found themselves immersed in a mission greater than they had ever imagined. The shelters expanded to different cities, and their initiative started gaining international recognition. But with growth came new challenges. One morning, as Ethan reviewed applications from volunteers, Alexander walked in with a concerned expression. He placed a newspaper on the desk. "We've got a problem." Ethan's eyes scanned the headline. Golden Bond Foundation under scrutiny. Former homeless man leading multi-million-dollar project. He sighed. "They think I'm a fraud?" Alexander nodded. "Some people can't believe that a man who was once homeless is now helping thousands. They're questioning your ability to handle the financial side of things." Ethan clenched his fists, but took a deep breath. "Then let's show them." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Ethan addressed critics directly, giving interviews and opening up the foundation's records for transparency. He shared his journey again, not as a fairy tale, but as a testament to resilience. During a live broadcast, a reporter asked, "Ethan, what would you say to those who claim you don't deserve to lead this foundation?" Ethan looked into the camera, his voice steady. "I'd tell them that leadership isn't about where you came from. It's about where you're going and who you bring with you. I won't stop until every person who feels invisible knows they matter." The response was overwhelming. Public support surged, donations increased, and even former skeptics acknowledged his sincerity. The foundation grew stronger, proving that the best way to silence doubt was through action. Years passed, and the Golden Bond Foundation became one of the most respected humanitarian organizations in the world. Ethan, once a man without hope, now stood as a symbol of second chances. And through it all, Max and Shadow remained by his side, reminders of the journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness. One evening, as he walked through one of their newest shelters, he saw a young man sitting outside, a stray dog curled up beside him. The man looked up, eyes filled with both fear and hope. Ethan smiled, reaching out his hand. "You look like someone who could use a fresh start." The young man hesitated, then slowly took Ethan's hand. And just like that, the cycle of kindness continued. The young man, Liam, hesitated as he took Ethan's hand. His grip was weak, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes, one that Ethan recognized all too well. He had seen it in his own reflection years ago. "Come inside," Ethan said gently. "We'll get you some food and a warm place to rest." As they stepped into the shelter, the warmth of the place enveloped Liam. Volunteers bustled around, serving meals, folding blankets, and greeting newcomers with kind smiles. The scent of fresh bread and warm soup filled the air, making his stomach growl. A volunteer, a woman named Clara, approached with a welcoming smile. "We're glad you're here," she said, handing Liam a steaming bowl of soup. "Take your, time. You're safe now." Liam glanced at Ethan, uncertainty still lingering in his gaze. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "What's in it for you?" Ethan chuckled softly. "I used to ask the same thing. The truth is, someone believed in me when I had nothing. Now I do the same for others. That's how change happens, one person at a time." Liam lowered his gaze, stirring his soup. "I don't know if I can change." "You don't have to do it alone," Ethan assured him. "We'll figure it out together." Over the next few weeks, Liam settled into the shelter, slowly letting his guard down. He started helping with small tasks, cleaning, serving meals, even assisting with the dogs in the shelter's pet care program. Max and Shadow took a liking to him, staying close whenever he felt overwhelmed. One afternoon, as Ethan walked through the shelter, he found Liam sketching on an old notepad. The drawings were detailed, portraits of people, the dogs, even the bustling activity of the shelter. Ethan was impressed. "These are incredible," he said, sitting beside Liam. Have you always drawn? Liam nodded. Used to. Before life got complicated. Ethan saw something familiar in his expression, the struggle to believe in one's own worth. He knew exactly how to help. What if we set up an art program? A place where people can express themselves, heal through creativity? Liam's eyes widened. You'd really do that? Ethan grinned. Why not? Every person here has a story. Maybe art can help them tell it. With Alexander's support, they launched the Golden Bond Art Initiative, giving shelter residents a space to create, heal, and rediscover their talents. The program became an instant success, attracting local artists who volunteered to teach and mentor. Liam flourished, finding confidence in his art and in himself. Eventually, he became an advocate for the foundation, sharing his journey and inspiring others. The cycle of kindness continued, growing stronger with each life it touched. One evening, as Ethan and Alexander stood outside the shelter, watching the city lights twinkle, Alexander clapped his friend on the back. You've built something incredible, Ethan. Ethan smiled, watching as Liam laughed with some new arrivals. I didn't do it alone, and so the Golden Bond legacy carried on. Proof that no matter how broken a person felt, with kindness, support, and a little faith, they could always find their way back home. Months passed, and the Golden Bond Art Initiative grew beyond anyone's expectations. The shelter walls were now adorned with breathtaking murals, each telling a story of resilience, loss, and newfound hope. Liam, once the quiet young man who had doubted his own potential, became the heart of the program, inspiring countless others. One evening, as Ethan and Liam walked through the shelter, Liam noticed a teenage girl sitting alone in a corner, hugging her knees. A sketchbook lay beside her, untouched. He recognized that look, the fear of being seen, of believing you were unworthy of kindness. He knelt beside her. Hey, I'm Liam. What's your name? She hesitated before whispering, Sophie. Liam smiled. That's a beautiful name. Do you like to draw? Sophie nodded but kept her arms wrapped around herself. Liam reached into his bag and pulled out his old notepad, flipping to the first page. It was a rough sketch of Max in shadow on the day he arrived at the shelter. This is the first drawing I made here. I thought I had lost my ability to create anything meaningful, but this place helped me find it again. Sophie glanced at the sketch, her fingers twitching slightly. If you ever feel like drawing, we'd love to see what you create, Liam added gently, standing up. No pressure, just know you're not alone here. That night, Sophie stayed in the shelter, and for the first time in weeks, she picked up a pencil. Meanwhile, Ethan and Alexander were preparing for the foundation's next step. A major investor had reached out, proposing to expand the Golden Bond mission nationwide. With the right funding, they could open more shelters, provide skill-building programs, and create sustainable opportunities for those in need. This is huge, Alexander said, reviewing the proposal. It could change everything. Ethan nodded, but there was a familiar weight on his shoulders. I just don't want to lose what makes this place special. It's not about numbers, it's about people. Alexander smiled. Then let's make sure we do it our way. We stay true to our mission, one person at a time. A month later, the foundation launched its biggest expansion yet. New shelters opened, each carrying the same warmth and personal touch that had made the original one a beacon of hope. Liam was invited to showcase artwork from the program at a citywide exhibition, and Sophie's sketches were among those displayed. As Ethan stood at the event, watching people admire the artwork created by those who had once felt invisible, he felt a deep sense of peace. Max and Shadow sat beside him, their tails wagging as if they too understood the significance of the moment. The Golden Bond had started as a simple act of kindness, but it had grown into something far greater. A why, movement of compassion, second chances, and unwavering belief in the human spirit. And it was only the beginning. With the success of the Foundation's expansion, Ethan, Liam, and Alexander found themselves at the heart of something extraordinary. The Golden Bond Initiative was no longer just a shelter. It was a revolution of kindness, a testament to the power of second chances. More lives were being touched, and every day, new stories of hope unfolded within the walls of the newly established centers. One morning, as Ethan reviewed applications from people seeking help, a letter caught his eye. It was from a former resident of the shelter, Daniel, who had left a year ago after securing a job as a carpenter. The letter was simple yet powerful. "Dear Ethan and the Golden Bond family, I can never thank you enough for what you did for me. You gave me hope when I had none, a home when I had nowhere to go. I want to give back. I've saved enough to open a small woodworking shop, and I'd like to train others who need a fresh start. I owe my life to this place, and it's time to pay it forward. With gratitude, Daniel." Ethan smiled as he finished reading. This was exactly what he had dreamed of. People who had been helped coming back to help others. He called Alexander and Liam into his office. "We need to support Daniel," Ethan said. "This could be the start of something much bigger. A job training program, a path to real independence for people coming through our doors." Alexander nodded. "I like it. We've given people safety, but we need to give them something beyond that, a way to rebuild their lives permanently." Liam, always thinking creatively, added, "Why stop at woodworking? We have artists, cooks, mechanics, people with skills who just need a chance. What if we created a program that helps them train others?" And so, the Golden Bond Skills Initiative was born. Within months, the foundation opened training centers where former residents became mentors. Carpentry, painting, culinary arts, and even technology courses were introduced. It became a place where people not only healed, but also thrived. One of the most touching moments came when Sophie, the young girl who had been afraid to pick up her sketchbook, held her first art workshop for children in need. As she guided their small hands in creating colorful murals, she beamed with confidence, something she had once thought she'd never have again. Meanwhile, Max and Shadow, the two dogs who had unknowingly started this entire journey, became the official mascots of the foundation. They visited different shelters, bringing comfort to those who needed it most. Their bond symbolized everything the foundation stood for: loyalty, kindness, and the belief that no one should be left behind. As the foundation grew, Ethan found himself reflecting on his own journey. He had started as a man who simply wanted to return a lost dog, but in the process, he had found something much greater, a purpose that changed countless lives, including his own. One evening, as he stood outside the shelter watching the lights glow warmly from within, Alexander joined him. "We did good, didn't we?" Alexander mused, hands in his pockets. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, and we're just getting started." Because the Golden Bond wasn't just a shelter, it wasn't just a charity, it was a movement, one that would continue to grow, to heal, and to prove that with a little kindness, anyone could find their way home again. And so, their journey continued, filled with new faces, new challenges, and endless possibilities. But no matter how far they went, they never forgot where it all began, with a simple act of recognition, a bond that refused to be broken, and a belief that every life mattered. The momentum of the Golden Bond Initiative showed no signs of slowing down. With each passing month, the impact of their work spread further, touching the lives of countless individuals who had once felt forgotten. The shelters weren't just places of refuge anymore. They had become beacons of hope and transformation. One afternoon, Ethan received a call from a well-known philanthropist, Margaret Whitmore. She had heard about the foundation and wanted to meet. "I've seen many charities, Ethan," Margaret said, as they sat in her elegant office. "But what you've built isn't just another shelter. It's a movement, and I want to help you take it even further." Ethan listened intently as she proposed an idea: opening a new type of facility that would serve as a transition home, where people could stay while they rebuilt their lives, complete with employment support, mental health services, and mentorship programs. "This could be life-changing," Alexander said when Ethan shared the idea later that evening. "Imagine giving people not just a safe place to sleep, but a true second chance at life." Excited by the prospect, Ethan and his team worked tirelessly to bring the vision to reality. Within 6 months, the first Golden Bond Transition Center opened its doors. It was more than just a shelter. It was a home where people could regain their independence at their own pace. New faces, new stories. As the transition center filled with residents, new stories of resilience emerged. Among them was Eric, a former soldier who had struggled with PTSD and homelessness. When he arrived, he barely spoke, haunted by memories he couldn't escape. One day, while watching a woodworking class, something clicked. He picked up a chisel and started carving a small, intricate sculpture of a dog. Liam noticed and encouraged him to continue. Slowly, Eric found solace in his craft, his hands shaping away the pain of his past. His work became so remarkable that an art gallery agreed to showcase his pieces. The day of the exhibition, Ethan and Liam stood beside him as he saw people admiring his sculptures. "You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning," Eric whispered. "That's something I never thought I'd have again." Spreading the mission with the Transition Center's success, the foundation's work gained national attention. More organizations wanted to partner, schools wanted to send volunteers, and even businesses began hiring people from the program. One of the biggest milestones came when Sophie, the once shy girl who had hesitated to pick up her sketchbook, was asked to paint a mural for the city's new cultural center. Her artwork, a massive piece depicting hands of different ages and backgrounds reaching toward a golden light, became a symbol of hope. Meanwhile, Max and Shadow, the foundation's beloved canine companions, continued their work as therapy dogs, visiting hospitals and orphanages. Their presence alone brought comfort to those in need, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could change a life. One evening, as Ethan, Alexander, and Liam sat by the fire pit outside the original shelter, they reflected on how far they had come. "We started with just a dog and a homeless man," Ethan mused. "Now we've got shelters, training programs, transition homes. It's hard to believe." "And yet," Alexander said with a grin, "I feel like we're only scratching the surface." As the night stretched on, they discussed new possibilities, expanding internationally, creating mobile shelters for emergencies, even starting a podcast to share stories of resilience. The journey of the Golden Bond Initiative was far from over, because kindness, they had learned, had no limits. It only grew stronger the more it was shared. And so they continued, determined to make the world a place where no one was forgotten, and every person, no matter their past, could find a future worth fighting for. As the Golden Bond Initiative continued to grow, the world began to take notice. What had started as a small effort to help those in need had blossomed into a national movement of compassion and transformation. Media outlets featured their success stories, and government agencies expressed interest in replicating their model in other cities. One day, Ethan received an unexpected invitation from an international humanitarian summit in Geneva. The world's most influential philanthropists and organizations would be there, discussing global solutions for poverty, homelessness, and mental health. Ethan, Alexander, and Liam saw this as a golden opportunity to take their mission beyond their city. At the summit, Ethan shared the story of how a single encounter with a dog and a homeless man had sparked a revolution of kindness. His heartfelt speech moved the audience, and several international organizations expressed interest in collaborating. Offers came in to establish Golden Bond centers in different countries, bringing hope to millions more. Inspired by the summit's success, the team set their sights on global expansion. The first international Golden Bond Center opened in London, followed by centers in Paris, Berlin, and Tokyo. Each center was adapted to meet the unique challenges of the local population, while staying true to the core mission, providing shelter, support, and opportunities for a better future. Meanwhile, back home, the transition centers continued to evolve. A partnership with major corporations allowed residents to receive job training and guaranteed employment upon completion of their programs. This not only gave them financial stability, but also restored their sense of purpose and dignity. One of the most touching moments came when Eric, the former soldier turned sculptor, hosted an art exhibit in Paris, showcasing works created by artists who had experienced homelessness. His journey from the streets to international recognition inspired countless others to believe in the power of second chances. As the foundation expanded, new faces joined the mission. Volunteers from all walks of life dedicated their time to making a difference. Doctors offered free medical checkups, counselors provided mental health support, and former residents became mentors for those just beginning their journey. Sophie, the once timid artist, launched an art therapy program that helped children and adults process their trauma through creativity. Her murals adorned the walls of shelters across the world, each one telling a story of resilience and hope. Max and Shadow, the foundation's beloved dogs, became international symbols of kindness. They traveled with the team, comforting people in crisis zones and bringing joy to orphanages. Their journey from the streets to the hearts of millions proved that love and loyalty could change lives. One evening, as Ethan stood on the rooftop of the original shelter, he marveled at how far they had come. Alexander and Liam joined him, their eyes reflecting the same sense of fulfillment. "We've built something incredible," Ethan said, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "And we're just getting started," Liam added with a grin. With the world now watching, the Golden Bond Initiative was more than just an organization. It was a global movement of kindness, proving that with compassion and determination, no one had to be forgotten. As they planned their next steps, one thing was certain: the journey was far from over, and the best was yet to come. The success of the Golden Bond Initiative continued to break barriers. Every day, more people found hope and a fresh start through its shelters, programs, and outreach efforts. The team barely had time to celebrate their victories before setting their sights on the next challenge. Ethan, Alexander, and Liam remained deeply involved, but they also understood the need to empower others to carry the mission forward. A new project emerged: a mobile assistance unit designed to reach people who couldn't make it to shelters. The unit was equipped with medical supplies, food, warm blankets, and most importantly, a team of professionals trained to offer immediate help. These units would travel through the city, ensuring no one was left behind, no matter how remote their location. One evening, while patrolling in one of the mobile units, Ethan met an elderly man named Walter who had been living under a bridge for years. Walter had once been a teacher, but life had thrown him into difficult circumstances. Despite his hardships, he had taken it upon himself to teach the other homeless individuals he encountered, using scraps of paper and old books donated by kind strangers. He had created a small school under the bridge, teaching literacy, mathematics, and even basic science. The story moved Ethan deeply. He knew that Walter's passion and dedication deserved a better platform. Within weeks, the foundation set up an outdoor learning center in one of the transition homes, hiring Walter to lead the education program. His makeshift school had turned into a formal initiative where people of all ages could learn and rediscover their potential. The impact was immediate. Some individuals who had never finished school found themselves inspired to continue their education, while others simply found joy in learning something new each day. Meanwhile, Sophie's art therapy program expanded into different communities, reaching individuals struggling with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Her workshops gained popularity, attracting people from all walks of life. Many of the murals created by participants were displayed in public spaces, serving as visual representations of resilience, love, and second chances. One particular mural, depicting a pair of hands lifting a fragile bird into the sky, became a symbol of the Golden Bond Initiative's mission. The foundation's reach extended to young people as well. Recognizing that early intervention was key to preventing homelessness, they started working with schools to provide mentorship programs for at-risk youth. Formerly homeless individuals who had successfully rebuilt their lives served as mentors, offering guidance and support. One of the first mentees, a boy named Jordan, had been on the verge of dropping out of school due to family instability. Through the program, he found stability and inspiration. Years later, he returned to the foundation, not as someone in need, but as a mentor himself. Max and Shadow, the beloved dogs who had been there since the very beginning, continued their work as therapy animals. Hospitals, elderly homes, and rehabilitation centers welcomed them with open arms. Their presence alone brought warmth and comfort to those in distress. One moment stood out when Max instinctively sat beside a young girl in a wheelchair who had been struggling to communicate. The gentle dog rested his head on her lap, and for the first time in months, she spoke a word. Friend. The Foundation's work attracted the attention of more philanthropists, corporate partners, and even celebrities who wanted to contribute. Funding poured in, allowing them to expand their efforts further. A documentary crew followed their journey, capturing the transformation of countless lives. The documentary, titled Golden Bonds, Stories of Hope, premiered at a major film festival, drawing even more support to the cause. Despite all the success, Ethan never lost sight of the people who had started this journey with him. On the Foundation's 10th anniversary, he, Alexander, and Liam stood before a gathering of hundreds of individuals who had once been in shelters, but were now living fulfilling lives. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he saw the proof of what they had built together. That night, as they sat together reminiscing about how it had all begun, Liam looked up at the sky and said, "Do you think we've done enough?" Ethan smiled. "We've done a lot. But enough? No. There's always more to do." The work of the Golden Bond Initiative was far from over. As long as there were people in need, they would continue to expand, reaching as many lives as possible. The journey was never about achieving an end goal. It was about making kindness, hope, and second chances a way of life. As the years passed, the Golden Bond Initiative became a cornerstone of hope, stretching far beyond its origins. Cities across the world adapted the model, customizing it to their unique societal structures, but the heart of it remained the same, giving dignity back to those who had lost everything. Ethan, Alexander, and Liam watched as what had once been a single encounter on the street evolved into a force that changed lives globally. The demand for expansion led to the creation of specialized divisions within the initiative. New programs were developed to address addiction recovery, financial literacy, and long-term housing solutions. With every new effort, success stories emerged. A woman named Elena, once trapped in an abusive household, found solace in the shelters. She went from struggling to survive to becoming a caseworker who guided others like her toward a new beginning. Meanwhile, Walter's education program saw its first class of students graduate. Many who had once believed they were doomed to a life on the streets found themselves holding certificates and degrees, ready to step into the world with confidence. The most remarkable part was that some of them returned, not as students but as teachers. Sophie's art therapy project had grown to the point where she was invited to host exhibitions worldwide. Her work, once confined to the walls of shelters, now adorned galleries in New York, London, and Tokyo. The proceeds from her shows funded even more outreach programs, allowing for the initiative to reach untouched communities. Max and Shadow, now older, but still as full of love as ever, continued their work. When Shadow eventually passed, it was as though the entire foundation mourned. His memory lived on through a new program named in his honor, a pet therapy initiative that expanded to hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and orphanages. With every passing year, new challenges arose. Economic downturns, sudden surges in homelessness, natural disasters. Each one tested the strength of the initiative. But every time, the community that had formed around the Golden Bond stood firm. People who had once needed help were now the ones extending their hands to lift others up. One particularly difficult time came when a devastating flood destroyed one of their largest shelters. Many of the residents had nowhere to go, and it seemed like all the progress they had made could be undone in a single night. But instead of despair, something incredible happened. The very people who had been given a second chance came together, leading rebuilding efforts, setting up temporary housing, and ensuring that no one was left alone in the disaster's aftermath. The unity in that moment proved that the initiative wasn't just about charity, it was about building a family that would never let each other fall. Ethan found himself in awe of how far things had come. Sitting in the Foundation's headquarters, one evening, He looked at the walls covered in photographs, snapshots of lives changed, moments of joy reclaimed, proof of what compassion could do. Alexander and Liam joined him, and they sat in comfortable silence for a long time, just taking it all in. Liam finally spoke. "I don't think we'll ever really understand how much of a difference this has made." Ethan nodded. "And that's okay, as long as we know that we kept going when it mattered most. The work was never finished. There would always be more people to help, more battles to fight. But as long as kindness remained at the heart of it all, the Golden Bond Initiative would continue to shine." The Golden Bond Initiative continued to flourish, touching the lives of thousands across the world. Every new chapter in its story brought unexpected challenges and heartwarming triumphs, proving that the mission was bigger than any single person. Ethan, Alexander, and Liam remained at the helm, ensuring that no matter how much the organization grew, it never lost the personal touch that had made it so powerful in the first place. One day, a young girl named Amara arrived at one of the Golden Bond Centers in London. She was only 14, having escaped a dangerous situation at home. Scared and unsure of what the future held, she was welcomed with warmth and kindness. With the guidance of volunteers, she found not only safety, but also a sense of belonging. She had always loved music, but had never been given the opportunity to learn. When one of the mentors discovered her passion, they helped her enroll in music lessons. Years later, Amara became a celebrated violinist, using her platform to advocate for homeless youth, and even starting her own music therapy program within the initiative. Meanwhile, in a small town in Canada, a former resident named Lucas had started his own shelter using the Golden Bond model. Once a homeless man struggling with addiction, he had turned his life around and dedicated himself to giving others the same chance he had been given. His shelter focused on providing employment training, and within the first year, dozens of people had secured stable jobs and permanent housing. His success story was a testament to how powerful second chances could be. As the organization expanded, so did its outreach efforts. A new program was launched to help elderly individuals who had been displaced or abandoned. Many had spent years living in isolation, with no one to care for them. The Golden Bond Initiative not only provided them with shelter, but also gave them a renewed sense of purpose. Some began mentoring younger residents, sharing their life experiences and wisdom. Others took up hobbies they had long abandoned, from painting to gardening, finding joy in the smallest of things. Despite the overwhelming success, the road was never without obstacles. When an economic downturn hit, donations dwindled, and several centers faced the risk of shutting down. It was during this time that an unexpected ally emerged. A group of former residents who had rebuilt their lives came together, organizing fundraising events and awareness campaigns. Their efforts raised not only money but also awareness, inspiring countless others to contribute. Their dedication ensured that no shelter had to close its doors. One of the most touching moments came when a young boy named Leo, who had once been found living in an abandoned building, graduated from university with honors. He had been taken in by the initiative as a child, given education and support, and now stood as a symbol of hope for everyone who felt lost. His speech at the annual Golden Bond Gala brought tears to many eyes as he spoke of how a single act of kindness had saved his life and shaped his future. Through all the ups and downs, one thing remained unchanged: the initiative's belief in the power of compassion. The organization continued to grow, evolving in ways no one could have predicted, yet staying true to its original mission. No matter how much time passed, it was always about people, about giving them a home, a future, and most importantly, a reason to believe in themselves again. As Ethan, Alexander, and Liam sat together one evening, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here, they knew one truth: there was still much work to be done, and they would continue, for as long as there was even one person in need of a second chance. As time passed, the Golden Bond Initiative grew beyond anything Ethan, Alexander, and Liam had ever imagined. It was no longer just a movement. It had become a global force of compassion. Every day brought new stories of resilience and transformation, proving that kindness had the power to change lives forever. One evening, as Ethan walked through one of the newly established centers in Brazil, he noticed a young woman sitting quietly in a corner. She had a sketchbook in her hands, her fingers tracing over the pages as if she was lost in thought. When he approached, she looked up with hesitant eyes. Her name was Camila, and she had been living on the streets since she was 15. Life had been cruel, but through the initiative, she had found safety and hope. She had always loved art, but poverty had stolen her dreams. Ethan encouraged her to join the center's art program, and within months, her talent flourished. Soon, her paintings were being displayed in exhibitions, and she was invited to share her story at international events. What had once been a hopeless existence turned into a journey of inspiration. In another part of the world, an elderly man named Robert found himself at the doorstep of a Golden Bond shelter in Sydney. He had lost everything after a series of unfortunate events, and his health was deteriorating. The volunteers welcomed him warmly, ensuring he had a safe place to sleep, medical care, and a support system. As he regained his strength, Robert shared stories of his past, revealing that he had once been a musician. The shelter organized a small concert for him, where he played the piano for the first time in decades. The music reignited a passion in him, and before long, he was teaching music to younger residents. His life, which he had thought was over, found a new purpose. Back in the United States, a young mother named Jasmine arrived at one of the centers with her 2 children. She had escaped an abusive relationship and had nowhere to go. The initiative not only provided her with shelter, but also helped her secure a job and enroll in school. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Her children, once fearful and withdrawn, began to smile again. They made friends, went to school, and started to dream about the future. Jasmine worked hard, and within 2 years, she had saved enough to move into her own apartment. She never forgot the help she received and returned to volunteer at the center, offering support to women who had been in her position. Despite the countless success stories, the initiative faced challenges. Natural disasters, economic crises, and political obstacles often threatened its progress. But every time the organization faced difficulties, the people who had been helped came together, proving that the Golden Bond Initiative was more than just an organization, it was a family. One of the most remarkable moments came when a boy named Arav, who had grown up in one of the shelters in India, achieved something extraordinary. He had always been fascinated by technology and spent every free moment studying. With the support of the initiative, he secured a scholarship to a prestigious university. Years later, he became a renowned engineer, using his skills to develop affordable housing solutions for the homeless. His work revolutionized the way shelters were built, ensuring that more people could have a dignified place to call home. As the years went by, Ethan, Alexander, and Liam knew that their mission was far from over. They continued to expand the initiative, reaching remote areas where help was desperately needed. Every life they touched became a ripple, spreading hope further than they had ever dreamed. The world was still filled with challenges, but as long as there were people willing to help, the Golden Bond Initiative would never stop shining. Ethan sat in his office one evening, looking at the world map on the wall. Every pin represented a city where the Golden Bond Initiative had taken root, where people had been given a second chance at life. He felt pride, but he also knew there was still more work to be done. The stories of Camilla, Robert, Jasmine, and Arav were only a few among thousands, and new challenges arose every day. One such challenge surfaced in Eastern Europe. Reports came in about an old factory that had been converted into a makeshift shelter for the homeless during the winter. The conditions were dire, and people were barely surviving. Ethan, Alexander, and Liam decided to travel there personally. When they arrived, they were greeted by an elderly woman named Magdalena, who had taken it upon herself to care for those in need. She had no resources, only her determination and kindness. Inspired by her efforts, the team quickly mobilized their contacts. Within weeks, the shelter was transformed. Walls were repaired, heating systems installed, and medical aid was provided. The residents, who had once shivered in the cold, now had a warm place to sleep and the hope of rebuilding their lives. One young man, Ivan, had been a skilled carpenter before losing everything. With the support of the initiative, he started a woodworking program, teaching others and producing furniture for new shelters across the region. Back in South America, Camilla's art continued to gain recognition. A famous gallery owner offered to showcase her paintings in a prestigious exhibition. Nervous yet excited, she stood before a crowd, sharing her journey from homelessness to success. Her story moved many, leading to increased donations for the initiative and inspiring other young artists in similar situations. Meanwhile, in Africa, another crisis needed attention. Drought had left many families without food or water, pushing more people into homelessness. The Golden Bond Initiative partnered with local organizations to establish sustainable farming programs. One man, Samuel, who had once lived in one of their shelters, became instrumental in leading these efforts. He trained communities on irrigation techniques, ensuring they had a steady food supply. His work helped countless families regain their independence, proving that one act of kindness could have lasting effects. Back in the United States, Jasmine's journey continued. Now a social worker, she dedicated her life to helping women escape abusive situations. She worked closely with law enforcement and shelters to create safe havens for survivors. She often thought about the night she had arrived at the Golden Bond shelter with her children. Now, she was the one welcoming others, offering them hope just as she had once received it. Liam focused on expanding job training programs. He knew that providing shelter was only one part of the solution. People needed sustainable employment to rebuild their lives. He worked with corporations and small businesses alike, creating partnerships that provided job opportunities for those who had faced hardships. A young man named Diego, once a street performer in Mexico City, became one of the program's greatest success stories. With training and mentorship, he secured a position at a renowned theater, proving that talent, when nurtured, could lead to incredible opportunities. Through all the successes, there were moments of heartbreak. Some people struggled to overcome their past, and not every story had a perfect ending. But the Golden Bond Initiative remained committed. They never gave up on anyone, believing that even the smallest act of kindness could change a life. Ethan often found himself reflecting on how it all began. A single moment on a cold street had ignited a movement that spanned the world. He, Alexander, and Liam had started with nothing but determination, and now their work had touched millions. As he sat in the headquarters one evening, looking at the photographs of lives transformed, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The world still had struggles, but as long as there were people willing to help, the Golden Bond Initiative would continue to shine, bringing hope to those who needed it most. The Golden Bond Initiative had grown beyond imagination, yet every new dawn brought fresh challenges and untold stories of resilience. Ethan, Alexander, and Liam found themselves deeply immersed in efforts to expand their mission further, reaching people in the most unexpected corners of the world. In Southeast Asia, a young girl named Aisha had been living in the shadows of an abandoned temple. She had lost her family to a devastating flood and had nowhere to turn. Local volunteers of the initiative discovered her one evening, curled up beside a stray dog that had become her only companion. When they approached her, she was hesitant, but the warmth in their eyes and the food they offered slowly melted her fear. They took her to a nearby center where she received care, education, and a chance at a future. As the months passed, her artistic skills emerged, and soon she was painting murals on the walls of the very center that had saved her. Her story became an emblem of hope in her community, encouraging others to step forward and seek help. Meanwhile, in Canada, an ex-soldier named Jacob struggled with post-traumatic stress and homelessness. For years, he had battled his inner demons, unable to reintegrate into society. He had lost his job, his family, and his will to fight. One frigid winter night, a Golden Bond shelter took him in, offering more than just a warm bed. They connected, him with therapy, support groups, and eventually, a veteran rehabilitation program. Slowly, he regained his confidence and found solace in woodworking. His craftsmanship was extraordinary, and soon, he was designing furniture that was auctioned to raise funds for the initiative. His hands, once trained for battle, now built comfort for others. In the Middle East, a young woman named Layla had escaped the turmoil of war, arriving at a refugee camp with nothing but the clothes on her back. She was intelligent, resilient, and had once dreamed of becoming a doctor. The Golden Bond Initiative partnered with international universities to provide scholarships to displaced youth, and Layla was among the first beneficiaries. She studied relentlessly, fueled by the desire to give back. Years later, she returned to the camp, not as a refugee, but as a medical professional tending to those in need. Her journey inspired thousands, proving that circumstances did not define destiny. Ethan found himself overwhelmed by the countless narratives of transformation. Every individual they helped became a beacon of light, igniting hope in the hearts of others. He often sat late at night, reading letters from those whose lives had changed because of their work. Some letters were filled with gratitude, while others spoke of struggles yet to be conquered. It reminded him that the mission was never ending, but that was what made it worth pursuing. One day, as he walked through a shelter in Australia, he encountered a young boy named Noah. He was only 10 years old but had already faced more hardships than most would in a lifetime. His mother had passed away, and his father had abandoned him. Left to fend for himself, he had found solace in storytelling. The shelter provided him with a notebook, and he began writing tales of adventure, hope, and resilience. One of the volunteers noticed his gift and submitted his stories to a local magazine. Soon, Noah's words were being read across the country, and a publishing house offered to turn his tales into a children's book. His journey from the streets to the shelves of bookstores became a testament to the power of nurturing potential. Amid the triumphs, the team faced a new obstacle. The initiative had grown so rapidly that funding became a pressing concern. While donations continued to pour in, the need for expansion outpaced their resources. Liam spearheaded a new strategy, reaching out to global leaders, corporations, and philanthropists who believed in their cause. The response was overwhelming. Governments pledged support, businesses offered employment programs, and influential figures championed their mission. The initiative was no longer just an organization. It was a global movement that had embedded itself in the fabric of humanity. Alexander took a step further, launching an innovation hub where individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds could learn skills in technology, digital arts, and entrepreneurship. The hub became a melting pot of ideas, and soon, startups emerged from the very minds that had once been deemed hopeless. Some developed apps to connect the homeless with resources, while others created sustainable solutions for affordable housing. The cycle of giving continued, fueled by those who had once needed help themselves. Through every challenge, the Golden Bond Initiative proved that compassion, when coupled with action, could change the world. Ethan often reflected on how one moment on a cold city street had set everything into motion. He had once recognized a dog from his past, but in doing so, he had recognized something greater, the undeniable connection that bound humanity together, and so the mission continued. Every life touched became a ripple in an endless ocean of kindness, ensuring that no matter how dark the world might seem, there would always be a light shining through.